The first time Delia heard the payphone ring, she thought it was her imagination. It was a Tuesday. Midnight had come and gone, but she couldn't sleep, not with the flickering streetlight outside her window pulsing like a slow heartbeat. Her fingers twitched for the blue pen she kept under her pillow, the one with the fine tip and smooth ink. She always wrote when the insomnia hit, scrawling numbers, dates, and odd phrases in the margins of discarded mail. The ringing started at 3:03 a.m., sharp, clean, 3 short bursts, then silence. She sat up in bed, heart tapping like a cautious knock. Again. The phone was an old relic bolted to the rusted metal pole beside Rudy's liquor off Crenshaw, forgotten by everyone, it seemed. No one used payphones anymore, and yet it rang. She waited the next night. Again 3:03, 3 rings, then nothing. Delia told herself it was coincidence, maybe a glitch, maybe some broken wiring in that rust bucket. But when she went to the corner the next morning, she found a folded receipt stuck in the coin return, dated exactly 1 year earlier. On the back, in shaky blue pen, was a series of numbers: 58 19 3 R E 7 12. She stared at it like it was a whisper only she could hear. Delia hadn't taught math in 10 years, not since the incident with the PTA meeting and the voices she swore came from the school intercom. They'd called her unstable then. Nervous breakdown, they said. But this felt different. The numbers meant something. She didn't know how yet, but they scratched at the back of her brain like a name she couldn't remember. That afternoon, she walked 3 blocks to the South Central Library, the one with the broken air conditioner and the gospel choir rehearsals on Saturdays. She pulled out old newspapers from the local archives, scanning for dates that matched the receipt. May 8th, 2019, there it was, buried on page B6, a small headline, barely a paragraph. Local boy 14 disappears after summer school. Police say likely runaway. No follow-up, no family quotes, no photo. She swallowed. That night, she waited on the corner herself. At 3:03 a.m., the phone rang again. She didn't answer. She was afraid to. But when it stopped, she slid her hand into the coin slot like before and felt another slip of paper. This one had no numbers, just 2 words. Next, Friday. Delia clutched the paper to her chest. Her eyes darted across the dark sidewalk, up toward the flashing open sign at Rudy's that flickered like a nervous blink. She didn't know who was leaving the notes. She didn't know what the game was yet, but she knew the rules were written in code, and she was the only one still watching the board. Friday came with a heavy sky, the kind of gray that hangs over South Central like bad news. Delia sat on the front porch of her aging duplex, knees pulled to her chest, spiral notebook in her lap. The cover was worn and frayed, corners bent from years of compulsive use. Her handwriting, small, neat, anxious, sprawled across every inch of the pages. Timestamps, phone rings, missing names, coded phrases. She tapped her pen against her lip, watching the street for signs of movement. Her neighbor's pit bull barked once, and then fell quiet again. Somewhere down the block, a garbage truck groaned into motion. She hadn't told anyone, not her cousin Marlene, who checked in every Sunday, not the social worker who still came by every 3 months with her fake smile and survey sheets. No one took her seriously, not after the incident, not since the whispers at the school board hearing and her name stamped on the psych eval. But tonight she wouldn't be alone. She had decided she was going to answer the phone. At 2:45 a.m., she wrapped herself in her faded purple coat and slipped out. The city was hushed, just the buzz of streetlights and the occasional hum of a distant car cutting through silence. She kept her eyes low, her pace steady. Her cane tapped with every 3rd step, not out of need but out of rhythm. Habit. The payphone stood waiting like a relic from another time. The metal was scratched. The receiver hung crooked, but it stood. and it rang. 303. 1. She flinched. 2. She hesitated. 3. Her hand closed around the receiver just before the last chime died. A pause, then static. "Hello?" she whispered. More static. And then a voice, male, low, raspy, almost mechanical. "Crenshaw and Slauson, Blue House, back porch before sunrise." Then the line cut. Delia stood frozen, phone still to her ear long after the voice disappeared. She scanned the street. No one. Only her breath in the cold. Crenshaw and Slauson. That was 6 blocks south. She knew the area. Rougher. The kind of place patrols didn't visit unless they had to. A blue house. Back porch. She scribbled the words in her notebook, then tore the page out and folded it into her coat pocket. Her fingers shook, not from fear, no, not quite, but from something else. Urgency, like she'd stepped into something far bigger than her, something ticking. By 4:10 a.m. she was walking the last block toward the intersection. Sure enough, the house was there. Pale blue chipped paint, sagging porch, lights off, no movement. She checked the address, 1427. Delia didn't go to the front. She circled left, slipping through the chain-link gate. The backyard was choked with weeds and old tires. A broken tricycle lay rusting near the fence. Then she saw it. On the back porch, taped to the side of the screen door, was an envelope. Yellowed, weather-stained. Her name on the front. Delia Jones. She looked around one more time before taking it. The envelope was thick. Inside were 6 pages, typewritten, double-spaced, clean. The title read, Project Mirror, Target List, Phase 1, and beneath that, names, dates, codes. One name jumped out immediately. Jordan D. Keller, age 15, missing since June 2018. She remembered that boy. He had lived just 3 blocks from her. His mom had organized a candlelight vigil that no one attended except for Delia and the pastor's wife. She flipped the page. The names kept coming. And on the last page, a new sentence bolded, "Watch who asks about this, they work in uniforms." Delia stuffed the papers into her coat and backed off the porch slowly. A wind kicked up through the alley. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. As she stepped back into the street, a cruiser rounded the corner behind her. She froze. It slowed. The passenger side window rolled down and a white cop with a square jaw peered at her from the driver's seat. "Ma'am, you out here this early for a reason?" Delia didn't blink. "Just walking home." The officer stared at her for a moment too long. Then he nodded once and rolled the window back up. The cruiser turned and pulled away. She didn't move until the taillights disappeared. Delia didn't trust easily. Not anymore. And certainly not the ones in uniform. Not after what happened with her brother. She clutched the envelope tighter and started walking. If what she held was real, if this Project Mirror was what she feared, then the clock had already started ticking. And this time, she wasn't just decoding puzzles. She was the next piece. By the time Saturday morning crept in through the blinds of her kitchen, Delia hadn't slept. She sat at the table, papers spread out like a battlefield. Her notebook on one side, the Project Mirror envelope on the other. The names haunted her. Kids from her own block, from parks and schools she once knew. Some were never mentioned on the news. Others were dismissed as just more South L.A. throwaways. Runaways, gang-affiliated, drug-connected. The system had already filed them under case closed long before anyone looked. But these documents, these files spoke in cold clinical terms, targets, timeframes, behavioral notes. And then one name stopped her. Isaiah M. Jones, age 11, removed, status sealed. Her pen slipped from her hand. Jones, her maiden name, her brother's name. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. No, no, no. Isaiah wasn't missing. He was dead, or so she had believed. 21 years ago, her baby brother had vanished on his way home from school. It tore her family apart. Her mother spiraled. Her father started drinking again. They said a man in a white van was seen near the middle school. Some said it was gang retaliation. Others hinted at trafficking. But no one was ever charged. No body was ever found. Eventually, the cops stopped returning her calls. Now here he was, buried in a document that claimed removed with his status sealed. Delia felt the walls tilt. Her fingers gripped the edges of the table to steady herself. Her brother's name, after all these years, filed away like some broken experiment. She needed answers. She needed someone who'd still talk to her. By noon, she was on the number 108 Metro bus, heading toward Florence and Normandy. She hadn't been back to Westview Middle School in years, not since she stopped teaching. The building looked the same: faded brick, boarded windows, graffiti tags curling around old concrete. But the security guard out front was new. Delia stood on the sidewalk, watching. Inside that school, there had once been a janitor named Mr. Hollis. Quiet, smelled like bleach and peppermints. He'd been working the day Isaiah disappeared. Back then, he'd told police he didn't see anything. But Delia remembered something else. She remembered how he avoided her eyes at the funeral, how he stopped sweeping their hallway the day after Isaiah went missing. She just prayed he was still alive. The address she found for him was off Avalon near the freeway, a brownstone walk-up with cracked steps and a busted screen door. She knocked twice. No answer. Then, movement. Someone peeking through the side curtain. "It's Delia Jones," she said, voice loud but calm. "From Westview. I need a few minutes. It's about Isaiah." The door opened slowly. Mr. Hollis had aged. His hair was white now, thin at the crown. But the eyes, those same wide, jittery eyes, narrowed as soon as he saw her. "I got nothing to say," he muttered. She held up the last page from the envelope. "Then why is his name here, in a file the police never mentioned? Why would they call him removed, Mr. Hollis?" His jaw twitched. "I told them the truth back then. He was there 1 minute, gone the next. You think I wanted that smoke? I think you saw more than you said." He stepped back, the screen door creaking. "They were already watching that boy," he said, voice low. "A white man in a suit came around the week before. Said he was from Child Services. Asked to see Isaiah's behavior reports." "What man?" "Didn't give a name. But he had this badge. Wasn't police. Had some weird eagle on it, not LAPD. He went into the principal's office and closed the door behind him. After that, things got strange. The cameras in the hallway stopped working that day. They blamed power issues. Next thing I know, your brother's gone." Delia swallowed hard. "And you never told anyone this?" "I told the cops," he said. "You think they listened? They said I was confused, that I'd been drinking." "Had you?" "Yeah," he said. "But I wasn't that drunk." They sat in silence. Then Hollis reached into a drawer and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. A cassette tape, old faded label. 2003 scribbled in black marker. "What's that?" "Hallway Mike picked it up," he said. "I recorded it off the old AV room feed. I wasn't supposed to, but I kept it, because I knew no one would believe me." Delia took it, hands trembling. "If they find out you're asking about this," Hollis said, eyes darting to the street, "you'll be next." That night, Delia dusted off the ancient cassette player in her closet. The tape crackled, grainy and warped from time. Then she heard it, a child's voice, Isaiah, and another voice, deep, calm, unfamiliar. "You're special, Isaiah. We're going to take care of you now. You won't remember any of this later." Then a soft hum, a mechanical whir, a door closing. Delia ripped the headphones off. Her baby brother hadn't been kidnapped by a gang. He had been taken by something else, something organized, official, and buried so deep the cops couldn't touch it. She stared at the envelope again, the bolded line echoing in her mind. Watch who asks about this. They work in uniforms. And that's when she realized the game wasn't just about missing kids, it was about erasing memory. And someone had just remembered the wrong thing. Sunday morning crept into Delia's apartment like a whisper, low, grey and damp with tension. She hadn't slept. Again. The cassette sat on her coffee table, still inside the old player, its tiny reels frozen like a held breath. She kept replaying the voice, the calm way it spoke to Isaiah. Like it wasn't a kidnapping, like it was a recruitment. She thought of his big brown eyes, how he used to hum to himself while building Lego towers on the porch, how he vanished and nobody cared long enough to keep his name in the paper past the third day. And now here she was, pacing her own living room at 62, hair frizzed, notebook pages scattered across the couch like a war plan. The world still thought Delia Jones was fragile, a sad woman with ghosts and notebooks, the kind they avoid in the grocery store line. But the ghosts were speaking now, and Delia was listening. She opened her laptop, an old clunky thing that took 3 minutes just to start, and began typing. Every name on the Project Mirror list, every missing child who'd been written off. She cross-referenced them with news clippings, public school rosters, death notices. Most were marked as runaways or dropouts. But then she found her first overlap. Naomi Carter, age 13. Went missing in 2020 from Inglewood. The official story. Left home after an argument with her foster mom. Case closed. But Delia found something else. A photo of Naomi from a 2019 community event, standing beside a man in uniform. Not LAPD, not sheriff, but military U.S. Air Force civilian liaison badge. She zoomed in. The patch read, Personnel Affairs, Section Epsilon. Delia's stomach knotted. She'd never heard of that section, and she used to teach military kids. She knew the acronyms, the departments. That badge was off, and Naomi, never seen again. At 6:07 p.m., the phone rang. Not her cell, not her landline, the payphone. She heard it from her window just like before. 3 short rings. She grabbed her coat and bolted. It wasn't even 3 a.m., but the pattern was changing. Someone was speeding up the game. She reached the corner in her house slippers, breath fogging in the evening air. The phone was silent now, but the receiver hung loose. Delia lifted it. Nothing, then click. A metallic echo. Then a voice. This one wasn't calm. It was urgent. Whispered. Male, maybe early 20s. Delia Jones, they're watching you now. You need to listen. Look under your mailbox. There's a burner phone. Turn it on. No texts, only calls. They clone texts. Click. She lowered the receiver and looked around. Someone was in on this, helping her. But how long before that person disappeared too? She raced back home, heart pounding. Her mailbox was bolted to the wall outside her front door. Beneath it, tucked behind the rusted support, was a Ziploc bag. Inside, an old flip phone, battery detached, new SIM. Delia carried it inside like it was an infant. She assembled it, powered it up, and waited. 10 minutes later, the phone buzzed. Unknown number. She answered. Is this Delia? A woman's voice, smooth, controlled, East Coast accent, mid-30s maybe. Who are you? Delia asked. My name doesn't matter, but I used to be part of Project Mirror, back when it was still called Vita. Vita, Latin for life. Originally it was a behavioral research program. They said we were helping children, high IQ, trauma-resistant. They monitored responses to loss, fear, control, but then it changed. Delia gripped the phone tighter. Changed how? They started taking the kids, isolating them, wiping memories, conditioning them for field roles, security, infiltration, even propaganda. Half of them don't even know who they were. The others, they vanished. When I tried to walk, they erased my records. I don't exist anymore. And my brother? Isaiah? Silence. Then, Delia, he's alive, but he may not remember you. They made sure of it. Tears pressed at the edges of Delia's eyes. You're lying. I'm not. I can send you coordinates. There's a facility in Mojave, underground, black site, unmarked. It's where most Phase 1s were relocated. But listen, if you go digging, they will come for you. I've been digging, Delia whispered. I'm just now finding dirt. I'll text the address, one shot. After that, this phone burns. Click. Delia stood in the kitchen, trembling. Her brother, alive. They'd stolen her life with silence, with doubt, with pills and whispers and diagnoses. But she wasn't crazy. She had coordinates now. She had names. She had proof. And by morning, she would have a plan. The desert didn't lie. That was the one thing Delia remembered her uncle saying every time they drove out to Victorville when she was a child. City got noise, got stories, but the desert? The desert only tells the truth. She hoped he was right. She rented the car under a fake name, a beat-up silver Hyundai that coughed every time she made a hard turn, the kind of car nobody looked at twice. It was just after 4 a.m. when she left South Central behind, the sky still dark enough to feel like night, but carrying the sharpness of a coming dawn. The burner phone buzzed only once more before she crossed the Barstow line. A single text. Look for the dirt road just past mile marker 112. It won't be on GPS, it's buried. If you reach the abandoned water tower, you've gone too far. Delia read the message 3 times, memorized it, then powered the phone off and stuffed it into the glove compartment beneath a towel. She was alone out there. No cell signal, no backup, no one who even knew she was gone. But the silence didn't scare her. What scared her was what might be waiting in that dirt. The turnoff came just past 7:15 a.m. The sun was up now, casting long, cruel shadows across the Mojave flats. She slowed to a crawl, the Hyundai rattling over gravel. A crooked road sign, faded to the point of illegibility, pointed toward nowhere. There were no buildings, no signs of human life, just dirt, dry brush, and scattered rusted fencing that looked like it hadn't been maintained since the Cold War. Delia drove another quarter mile. Then she saw it, a chain-link gate, locked but sloppily. The padlock wasn't latched, and behind it, a narrow trench of road led downward, into the earth. She parked the car behind a scraggly row of dead Joshua trees and made the rest of the walk on foot. The wind howled through the hills as she descended, and the air felt heavier. Then the silence broke, a soft hum, electric, artificial, just beneath the surface. Delia reached the bottom of the slope and found what looked like a small utility shack built into the rock face, unmarked, metallic, like it had been dropped from the sky. She stepped forward and tapped on the steel door with her cane. It slid open with a mechanical hiss. No handle, no guard, only a keypad glowing green. Waiting, Delia stared. She had no code, but her hand moved anyway. Instinct. She typed in the numbers from the first receipt she ever found in the payphone's coin return. 58, 19, 3. Beep, beep, click. The door opened. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed against a hallway of concrete and white tile. No sound, no footprints, no cameras that she could see, though she knew they were there. She moved quietly. Every few feet, another door appeared, labeled only with letters E1, E2, FG. At room K, she paused. There were voices inside. She held her breath and leaned closer. A woman's voice, muffled, robotic. Subject 11A has increased tolerance. Memory restoration attempt failed. Recommend another round of MKV. A man responded. What about subject J3? Unstable. Too much interference. Emotional memory bleed. Delia's heart pounded. MKV. Memory kill vector. They weren't erasing memories, they were burning them clean. She kept walking until she reached the final door. It wasn't labeled. She pushed it open and stopped cold. The room was dimly lit, circular, sterile. Inside were 6 chairs, metal, bolted to the floor, restraints hanging from each one, and in the back, behind a sheet of plexiglass, a young man sitting perfectly still, head shaved, eyes blank, arms folded, dressed in grey. Delia took a shaky step forward. The light above him flickered once, twice. She whispered his name. Isaiah. No reaction. Isaiah, baby. It's me. Delia. His head turned slowly, eyes narrowed. Then, nothing. Blank. She pressed her palm to the glass. Her voice cracked. You used to hum to yourself, remember? That silly song you made up about the cereal box. You had a lisp. You called me Julia. Still nothing. Then a twitch. His fingers moved, light, subtle. He began to hum, low, off-key. But it was the song. Delia's knees buckled. He was in there, somewhere beneath the static, beneath whatever they'd done to him. Her brother was still alive, and now she had proof. She turned to leave, to get out before someone noticed. But when she reached the hallway, a silhouette stood waiting. Tall, military boots, clean-shaved, cold expression, and his badge didn't say LAPD. It read, Federal Department of Memory Affairs, Section Epsilon. He spoke without blinking. Ms. Jones, you need to come with us. Delia didn't move. Her eyes locked on the badge, the silver eagle with the downward-pointing key in its claws. Federal Department of Memory Affairs, Section Epsilon. That name wasn't in any public record, not listed under any branch of law enforcement, not military, not federal. But there it was, worn casually by the man standing 6 feet away, his gloved hands folded in front of him like he was about to offer her a tour, not arrest her. I'm not going anywhere with you, Delia said. The man tilted his head. Miss Jones, you've already seen what you weren't supposed to. That glass room, that subject. You trespassed into a government site. You activated a locked protocol without clearance. You're a civilian with classified material in your possession. You mean my brother? She snapped. That's what you're calling him, material. The man blinked. Subject 11A is not your brother. Whatever connections you think you've made are coincidental. We've identified a pattern of delusional paranoia associated with... Don't you dare gaslight me, she growled. Not again. She reached into her coat pocket slowly, never breaking eye contact, and pulled out the cassette tape. She held it up. I have more than you think. And if something happens to me, others will get copies. His expression didn't change, but his left eyebrow twitched, just once. He stepped forward. Delia didn't flinch. Ms. Jones, this program was never meant to intersect with civilians. You've stumbled into a layered protocol meant for national defense. These children weren't taken. They were redirected. For their safety. For yours. Redirected? Her voice cracked. You erased their families. You locked them in rooms. You turned my brother into a ghost with a number. The man exhaled through his nose. Quiet. Sharp. Walk with me. Let me show you something before you decide what happens next. Delia didn't answer, but her legs moved anyway. He led her down a new corridor, deeper than the others. The walls changed from sterile white to a darker grey, unfinished cement. The air smelled faintly of ozone and cold metal. They reached a door marked Observation Room C, Cognitive Drift Wing. Inside, rows of monitors filled the walls, each showing a face, dozens of them. Boys, girls, black, brown, white, all around age 10 to 15. They stared blankly at the cameras in their rooms, or scribbled silently in notebooks, or tapped walls in rhythmic patterns. Delia's hand trembled. They're alive, she whispered. Yes, the man said. More than you know. He stepped beside one monitor and tapped the glass. "This is subject J3. She was found in East New Orleans, 2017. History of abandonment, minor criminal record. We intercepted her before she was trafficked. Now she assists in encrypted pattern recognition. She saved hundreds of lives from domestic terror threats." Delia stared. The girl on the screen looked no older than 12. "She doesn't even know who she is," Delia said. "You stole that from her." "We gave her purpose." "No," Delia hissed. "You gave her a prison with walls too clean to see." The man stepped closer. His tone changed, lower, colder. "You want to believe you're the hero in this story, Ms. Jones, that you uncovered some grand conspiracy, that your pain has meaning, but this isn't about you. It never was." Delia looked at the monitor again, and then, without warning, she pulled the fire alarm. A blaring siren erupted overhead. Red lights spun along the hallway ceiling. The man cursed and reached for his radio. Delia ran. She didn't know the way out, but she knew chaos gave her one thing: time. She ducked into a storage hall, swiped a white lab coat off a hook, and slipped it over her clothes. If she could get back to the plexiglass room, get Isaiah out, she could— "Stop!" A voice behind her. Footsteps pounding. Too close. She darted left, through another set of double doors. This hallway was darker, older, no cameras. The tiles were scuffed with drag marks. It felt wrong. Then she saw it. A room, unmarked, its door ajar. Inside, metal tables, surgical tools, syringes lined in rows, and photographs, dozens of them, laid out in a grid. All the missing kids, every single one from the Project Mirror files. Labeled, indexed, some crossed out. Delia's hands went to her mouth. They weren't just erasing memory. They were selecting who got to stay human and who didn't. She turned to run, only to find 2 guards waiting at the door. Uniforms black, visors down, guns raised. "Don't move!" one barked. Behind them, the man with the Section Epsilon badge stepped into view again. Only now his voice was different, sharper, clipped. "You should have taken the walk, Miss Jones." Delia looked past them all, back at the photos, back at her brother's name scratched into the metal clipboard. Isaiah M. Jones, transfer scheduled. 72 hours, 3 days. That's all she had left. They restrained her with smooth, practiced movements. No yelling, no excessive force, just silence, clinical efficiency. One guard clipped zip ties around her wrists. Another scanned her iris with a handheld device. No badge, no Miranda rights. This wasn't law enforcement. This wasn't even black ops. This was something else. They marched her through corridors she hadn't seen before. Deeper levels, darker walls. The air grew colder the further they went. She counted steps in her head to steady her nerves. 128 steps. The cell wasn't a cell, not in the traditional sense, no bars. Just a white cube with a cot, a table, a toilet in the corner, smooth walls, padded corners. A thin camera lens blinked once above the doorway as she was shoved inside. Click. The door sealed behind her. Delia sat on the edge of the cot, breathing hard, heart still racing. They had Isaiah scheduled for transfer in 72 hours. That could mean relocation or deletion. She knew she wouldn't get another chance to walk those halls again, not unless she had help. And whoever had tipped her off before, the voice on the burner phone, had gone silent. But someone had helped her once. That meant someone inside wanted the truth out, so she started with what she had left, her mind. Delia closed her eyes and began reciting the names, all of them. Naomi Carter, Jordan Keller, Isaiah Jones. She whispered them like a prayer, building a rhythm to ground herself. With every repetition, her brain began reconstructing the floor plan. She'd seen enough, even in flashes, to map a path. That plexiglass holding cell wasn't far from the corridor with the surgical tables. She remembered a faint smell of iodine, the hum of ventilation, a faint buzzing when the hallway turned left. If she could break out, she knew where to go. She just didn't know how. Until she noticed the blinking light under the cot. She bent down, heart jumping, and found it, barely visible, hidden in the crease of the floor. A piece of folded paper, taped to the bottom, waterproof. She peeled it free and unfolded it carefully. Inside, in small, tight handwriting, "There are ducts above you, 2 turns, 18 tiles over. Loosen the panel with the metal leg under the table, 9 p.m. Wait for lights to flicker twice." No name, no signature, just a time. 9 p.m. That night, the silence came early. At 8:55 p.m., the overhead lights dimmed for routine maintenance. The guard's shift rotated every 6 hours. The camera lens above her blinked red. At 8:59, Delia slipped the metal leg from beneath the bolted table. It had been loosened exactly as the note said, and pried at the tile on the ceiling. Her arms shook with the effort, but it gave way. A vent shaft greeted her, narrow, tight, but open. She climbed. The air inside the duct was metallic and sharp, carrying the sounds of the facility like whispers through a funnel. She crawled carefully, counting tiles and turns. Below her, voices murmured through floor grates, code words, commands, keys. "Initiate Phase 2 on Subject 11A. Dr. Rayner wants a full wipe by Tuesday. Test group for Vita Echo prepped for relocation." Then a word that made her stop cold. "Omega Room." She held her breath. That name had been scratched out on one of the clipboard pages back in the surgical hall. One more turn. Delia reached a rusted vent cover above a blue-lit hallway. She pried it open, lowered herself onto the floor silently, and checked both ends. Clear. She was near the main processing wing. She recognized the grey walls, the keypad doors. She moved fast. Room 11A sat at the very end. She pressed her ear to the door. Nothing. Then, soft humming. Familiar. The cereal box song. Delia smiled, tears stinging her eyes. She entered. Isaiah sat cross-legged on the floor, still humming. This time he looked up faster. Recognition shimmered behind the fog of his gaze. "Delia," he whispered, voice like dust. Delia dropped to her knees. "Oh, baby. Yes, it's me. It's really me." His hands reached for her slowly, trembling. She wrapped him in her arms. For the first time in 2 decades, her brother was real. Not a photo, not a file, not a ghost. Warm and breathing. But the moment shattered. A voice over the loudspeaker. "Unauthorized access in Wing 3, Room 11A breach. Lockdown in 30 seconds. No time. Delia scanned the room. 1 exit, 1 console. She dragged Isaiah up, arm over her shoulder. "Come on, baby. You remember how we used to sneak out of Mama's room after lights out? We're doing that again." He didn't respond in words, but he moved. Half limping, half aware, he followed her. Down the hall, past red warning lights, sirens blaring behind them. She needed an exit. Then, another miracle. The same woman's voice from the burner phone echoed from a hidden comm. "Storage elevator ahead, code 7792. It bypasses the security net. Move." Delia ran. The countdown had started. And if she didn't beat the clock, Isaiah wasn't the only one they'd erase. Delia's feet burned. Each step down that corridor was a scream in her joints, a threat to buckle under her, but she pushed forward, dragging Isaiah with one arm, guiding him with the other, whispering encouragement as the red hallway lights strobed overhead like a warning heartbeat. The storage elevator looked like nothing, unmarked, dusty, a dented aluminum door that barely caught the light. Delia slammed her hand on the keypad. 7792. Beep, beep, click. The door groaned open. She pulled Isaiah in and hit the lone bottom button. The panel didn't label where it led. No basement, no exit, no surface, just a down arrow. And she prayed that was enough. As the doors sealed shut behind them, the last thing she saw was a blur of black uniforms rounding the far corner. Too late. The elevator dropped fast. Isaiah's breath was ragged, shallow, but his hand found hers in the dark. He remembered something. She could feel it. When the elevator opened again, it wasn't in another corridor, it was in sunlight, blinding, blistering. They emerged onto a dirt path behind a jagged cliffside. No guards, no fences, no walls, just Mojave wind and wide-open land, a battered old jeep idling 30 feet ahead. A woman stood beside it, baseball cap, cargo pants, scar running from her temple to her cheekbone. Delia recognized her voice instantly, the woman from the burner phone. "You got him?" she called. Delia nodded, still holding Isaiah steady. The woman opened the back of the jeep. "There's water, blanket. He'll be okay, but we've got less than 5 minutes before that facility realizes the elevator got reprogrammed." Delia helped Isaiah into the seat, then turned, stunned. "Why are you helping me?" The woman shrugged. "Because I was subject 2F. They told me my parents abandoned me, that I was broken. But I remember now. I remember my mom's laugh. I remember my brother's funeral. And I remember what they stole from me." She paused, looked Delia in the eyes. "And now they're going to pay." They drove for hours through the desert, avoiding all major roads. When they reached the safe house, an abandoned fire lookout tower near Ridgecrest, they bathed Isaiah, wrapped him in a warm hoodie, and let him sleep. Delia sat in the corner with a cup of instant coffee and a borrowed laptop. Her fingers moved like they were on fire. She uploaded everything: the audio tape, the Project Mirror files, scans of the missing children's photos and records, the name of every agent and every doctor she'd seen. She titled the file, "The Forgotten, an Archive of What They Tried to Erase." Then she hit Send All. Dozens of recipients. Every local news outlet, every online journalist known for whistleblower stories, civil rights groups, a few rogue Reddit boards. She didn't care if only one person believed her. The truth was loose now. By Wednesday morning it was viral. Underground memory facility in Mojave Desert allegedly housed dozens of missing children. Retired teacher claims brother was abducted in government mind-wiping program. Feds deny involvement, refuse access to coordinates. But the fire had already caught. Other families came forward. Other stories resurfaced, and one by one the ghosts became names again. Isaiah didn't talk much in the first few days, but one afternoon, while Delia read aloud from his favorite childhood book, he touched her arm and whispered, "You're real, right?" She smiled through tears. "As real as the sky, baby." He reached for her hand. "I think I remember the cereal song." And together, on a plastic cot in the corner of a dusty safe house, they hummed it, off-key and perfect. 2 months later, the US government released a formal denial. No acknowledgement of Section Epsilon. No reference to Project Mirror. They chalked it up to disinformation and digital forgery, but Delia didn't need their confession, because she had something better. She had her brother, and she had a new purpose. Today she runs an underground archive called the Memory Ledger, a network of survivors, teachers, techs, and former assets once deemed disposable. They document what was erased. They chase the trails that still lead to shadows. And every time another mother finds their child through her files, every time another name gets restored, Delia hears that old phone ring. 3 times. 3:03 a.m., and this time she answers without fear. Ending. But the story never really ends. Not as long as someone remembers, and not as long as the phone keeps ringing.